how are we doing? I'm very excited to finally show off what I've been working on for this series and what format I'm going to make this series. And here it is. We're just in some forest. But I just wanted to make some real chill content, kind of the stuff I made about a year ago. I mean, you know, life's a bit hectic. So why don't you just come, grab a log, we'll sit by the fire and we'll read a comic book. So I think with this, I was worried I was going out of order with the comic books. But Garden Warfare, the first Garden Warfare comic, was released right after Bully for You, so it was the fourth comic book released. So technically, if I'm going in release order, I'm not going out of order. So it's technically in the same series, but it's the first Garden Warfare comic book, which is a different comic book line. And so the idea for this comic was supposed to be kind of the background leading up events to Garden Warfare 2, the game. So this is finally going to give me some of that kind of background lore that I wanted to see in the other comic books. And I'll say right up top, it did pull through with that for me. We're going to talk about it. So this comic book starts off with Zomboss being like just infatuated by this like metallic butt he found that he retrieved from the future. And if you've played Garden Warfare or looked at the cover of this comic book, you know exactly what that's a piece to, right? So a bunch of imps just kind of start showing up all over the show, just kind of running amok. They're doing their thing, just being imps. And so at this point, Zomboss hatches his devious plan to kind of mass produce just the butt, just the arse end of the Z-Mag. Oh, spoiler alert. Just makes a ton of them. And I suppose it's just slowly building up to the reveal of a Z-Mag, because in like these next few panels, you start seeing them make other parts. Yeah, you see here like the zombies, like now they're making legs and feet and such, and it becomes incredibly obvious what they're doing. And then we get introduced to Citron, just basically out of nowhere. Our main characters, Nate Timely and Patricia Blazing, who are in the previous comics, they just strolling about. No one's there. Everyone's been invited to some cruise for unspecified reasons at the moment. So they've all been sent off. So it's just these two kind of roaming around town. And out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, Citron comes from the future and just rolls off somewhere. So they go and chase him down, and they find Rose, who has been sent from the past. So our main characters, they come across Citron, they come across a Rose. Literally, they just stumble across them in some like mall. That's all you need to know. And then after that happens, they contact Crazy Dave, and Dave's like, alright, I'm sick of this. We're gonna go and assault the factory, Z-Tech factory. So they do that, and it's at this point they reveal the Z-Mech that they have, of course, been building. And I like the detail here where it comes out of a blimp. I mean, in Garden Warfare 2, the Z-Mech comes out of a little portal. I guess that's to explain why you can summon it, like, under a bridge or somewhere. Like, it fits in the game. But I think it would have been nicer to have it, like, actually jump out of a blimp and you could see it fall from the sky. I mean, from a gameplay perspective, that is probably a nightmare, and you'd only be able to call it outside, but I like this detail here, kind of justifying the universe a bit more. And also, this comic book features Plants vs. Zombies 2 plants to begin with, and then slowly they just turn into the Garden Warfare plants. Okay, so after that, so older versions of our main characters come back from the future to tell them that, yeah, no, it's all gone horribly wrong in the future. Zomboss is taking over everything. He's just tearing his way through Neighborville. And there's a nice little map. I like this map. We'll talk more about this map. But yeah, no, they just explain that, yeah, it's all gone horribly wrong. They have a bit of a biffo, a bit of a punch-up with some Z-Megs. And then out of nowhere, the Rose reappears. And I quite like the character of Rose, because, you know, they explain that she came from, like, medieval times from the past. Or from a different past. Something like that. And she, like, revealed in one of her petals that there's a present where Zomboss is meddling with time. And she's like, okay, alright, I'm gonna go forward in time and stop this. I like that. There's that lore. That beautiful lore that I was so desperate to kind of get my hands on. There it is. I mean, it's not in depth, but nor was I really expecting it to be. I just wanted to, you know, some funny background information for these characters, you know, add a bit more dimension to them. And I was expecting it, wanting it to be silly. This is very silly. I think this comic book in general kind of strikes the correct kind of comedic balance, or the correct type of comedy that kind of resonated with me a lot more than the previous three comics. It just made me smile most of it, and this is just a nice instance of that. This is also where we see Super Brains. He just appears. I say, okay, after Super Brains has been introduced, Crazy Davey makes some weird frog machine, because it's revealed that apparently frogs burping can close time pools. Hey, look, just go with it. Okay, then Citron reappears out of nowhere, and you get his backstory, where he's just, you know, Crazy Dave just made him in a lab. He was just just an orange, and then became, I mean, you know, an orange but with sunglasses and a gun. So then we see Zomboss, he's reaching through to the future and pulling technology from the future back to the present to win. Like the entire point of Garden Warfare 2, and that's how he wins. I suppose it's, spoiler alert, yeah, he wins, because, I mean, we've all played Garden Warfare 2, I guess. I mean, in this specific comic book, I don't think he triumphs. I think in the end, our heroes, they save the day. Of course they do. But in Garden Warfare 2, that's not the case, because, well, I mean, the game exists, and the whole premise is that the zombies won. So continuity error, maybe? Who knows? Okay, and next, probably my favorite bit in terms of, like, putting a smile on my face, we get some gnomes. The gnomes, they don't do anything in this comic book. Spoiler alert, they're just there. I don't know if they do anything in the next Garden Warfare comic books, because I've only read up until this point. I've not read anything beyond this. So maybe they do something, but here they just literally show up. They make some gnome noises, and they're like, twiddle-dee-dee, hee-hee, fiddle-dee-dee, you know how it be. And they don't do anything, but they're here, and I like it. I like that they're not like generic gnomes either, they've got a bit of personality to them. So this next part of the comic book, we've got the future version of Patrice and Citron. They go to the future from the present. So I suppose they'd go back to the time they came from, but for the purposes of not, you know, destroying all the neurons in your head, they go from the present to the future. So when Zomboss reaches through with his little mechanical arms to grab that future technology, they grab an EM Peach instead, and it just fries everything. So that's what they're up to in the future. Then back to the present, we have future version of Nate. This is going to get very confusing. So in the present, we have Rose fighting Super Brains, and they've got to figure out how to defeat him. That's that. Another map update. We also got the gnomes still just standing there like, what the hell are we even doing here? I think they even make a comment about the fact they did nothing. So hey, look, at least they're self-aware. The whole EM Peach thing works. So he grabs the EM Peach, he pulls it through, it fries all of his technology, and it all starts disintegrating because I guess it doesn't exist anymore. Like, it being destroyed in the present means it wouldn't exist in the future, and if it doesn't exist in the future, he won't be able to grab it from the future and bring it back to an earlier present, so everything disintegrates, kind of like fades away back to the future style. At least that's my takeaway from how all of that worked. So yes, he does in fact lose, and the comic book ends with him being sad, but he still has the original metallic butt from before somehow. I don't know. So felt like a very short one. Maybe it's because it was just a breezier read. I don't think it was any longer than any of the other comic books. It was like, it definitely felt like a breezier read. I mean, it's like 100 and something pages, so it's definitely not the shortest comic book in the world. But I think overall, easily my favorite. Like, this is the good stuff. This is what I was expecting when reading the first Plants vs. Zombies comic book. I will say that I think the art is better in the other two, like Timepocalypse specifically. The second comic book had the best art in my opinion. This one, I'm not saying the art was bad, I just don't really think it's as good. Maybe it's compositionally, or you know, the designs didn't really like stick with me very well. But yes, I finally got the lore that I wanted, and I'm pretty sure like at some points in the comic book, like Colonel Corn and Deadbeard just show up for one panel. They're like, yeah, no, they're here. Trust. And honestly, I wasn't disappointed. I kind of got exactly what I was expecting. He reaches into the future, grabs just Z-Mex. I mean, I was expecting, like, when he said technology, I just thought all sorts, but it was literally just Z-Mex. Brought that to the present, running amok, and then plants and zombies from other parts of the timeline. I don't know why that word escaped my mind, but they just come to the present to try and prevent this from all happening. If there was anything I could nitpick about this comic book, because honestly, this comic book does not take itself seriously at all. For as much as it does try to provide some lore, it's all really silly. And taking any of this seriously is just like, I mean, the comic book does not want you to do that. It's just have a laugh for 100 pages, basically. But if I were to nitpick, it would be that they do not explain time travel in this. Like, is it linear? Is it non-linear? Are we talking about, I mean, I'm assuming it's like Back to the Future style. But if that was the case, why does everyone come to the present? Because the present is when he's choosing to kind of launch this future technology. Surely you'd travel to the moment before he goes to the future to stop him, instead of, fighting the present. So I like the idea that the Rose is from, like, the Middle Ages, and was a sorcerer from the Middle Ages. Maybe from a parallel universe. At least that's what I took away from those panels. But she's from the Middle Ages, which explains why there's a bunch of castles and stuff. So it explains why the ending section of Seeds of Time is all medieval, because that's the time period that Rose came from. That's a fun detail that I wouldn't have picked up on if I hadn't read this comic book. I mean, Citron being from the future, I guess everyone just expected that. Because I guess Citron's backstory, at least how I interpret it, Crazy Dave, like, we're in the future, Z-Mechs are already running amok. We're in the future, and Crazy Dave creates this orange man to fight them, which is fun. That's also kind of the in-game explanation as well for things, because like what Citron's the counter to Z-Mechs basically, and in this comic book it kind of like solidifies that idea. But narratively, that's how he came to being as well. I mean, aside from that, there are a bunch of other Garden Warfare related references. Like I mentioned before, as the comic book goes on, they go from the PvZ 2 plants to the Garden Warfare 2 plants, and same with the zombies as well. There's a Centurion in one panel, Toxic Pea in another panel, Shadow Flower, and like, so all of the other variants kind of scattered somewhere on these panels. It's a real Where's Wally, or Where's Waldo. Is that what it's called in other parts of the world? It's Where's Wally over here, okay. But yeah, you can just go through and just find so many cool like variants just kind of buried in the background. There's even at one point, I think it's a rock pea with a bunch of like lizard cosmetics on from Garden Warfare 1, which is fun. That's fun. That's a fun detail. I like that. Unfortunately, you cannot like pimp out your rock pea to look like that, but if you wanted to do that in the previous game, then you go for it. Like maybe on a Commando pea, who I also spotted in this comic book, you could do that with. There's a reference to Dr. Patient. He just appears in a couple of panels in this, which is, you know, obviously a reference to the Dr. Patient in Garden Warfare 2, who gives you all of the the campaign missions. Of course, we've got the origin of the imps, who just kind of turn up out of nowhere. I think the imps are from the present, I think. I mean, everyone in here knows what an imp is, but they've all got those like futuristic costumes on, so maybe Dr. Zombos pulled the imps from the future as well. But as far as the comic book tells me, he just pulls the Z-Mechs from the future, and that's how he basically wins, or doesn't win in this comic book. Which is like, is this a separate universe to the games? Because I know this is supposed to be providing background information for the games. I'm gonna go back to that Rose panel. Yeah, so she says the future has many possible petals, and in one of them there is this. So she's not from the past, she's from a past. Which kind of says to me there's multiple universes. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I'm going to take away from this there's parallel universes. Hey, look, I wanted lore, and most lore hurts my head, so here we are. I think overall, talking about the comic book in general, I actually got something out of the comedic parts of this comic book. The other Plants vs. Zombies comic books weren't really doing anything for me, but this one got a couple of chuckles out of me. Like, the Mr. Pigs map gag. I don't know why I appreciated that one so much. Where plants and zombies, and then Mr. Pigs. One of them would be like, Mr. Pigs has fallen asleep, so like there's no Mr. Pigs presence on the map. And then the next one would be like, oh, Mr. Pigs is woken up again, everyone watch out. And after that, it'd be Mr. Pigs, bracket, that dog. I don't know why I like that so much. Yeah, overall, I thought this comic book was just a fun and engaging read for me. I'm definitely not this comic book's like age demographic, like a target audience, but I still had so much fun with this. This was like the breeziest read, I tell you. I was like start to finish in one sitting. This is absolutely the best one so far. I absolutely love. I think Rose specifically sticks out to me. I just like the fact that she's from the Middle Ages, and I can kind of like connect a few dots in that area. Like the ending part of Siege of Time and all the other Middle Ages references in Garden Warfare 2 are there because that's where Rose comes from. I like that. You know, like I said, this comic book does not take itself seriously, so it doesn't really need to explain the time travel. You just need to kind of appreciate it for what it is. And I like the idea of some time police being the gnomes. These kind of like all-powerful godlike beings that exist kind of outside of time, going around and basically acting as like the time police. I like that, and I hope that they feature in another comic book, because I like the gnomes. And I think overall, in terms of like world building and narrative, this is definitely the strongest comic book, like on those fronts as well, because there's just a lot more going on in here. But this one just felt more robust narratively, I guess. I mean, this is no like Hobbit, right? Let's not get Tolkien on the line here. I don't think he's sweating. But you know, things in this universe, when they happen, they have consequences, which is like a very basic narrative element, I understand, but the consequences, there are just consequences for things happening. So it's not just like the other three comics, a thing happens, we move on, another thing happens. Here it's like a thing happens, which then leads to this thing happening. Here's the consequence of that thing happening. Overall, I'm just going to be like, this is a good one. Read this one. 8 out of 10. Oh, wait, I haven't been rating these, have I? A good out of 10. A good out of... Yes, please. Let me know if you've read it in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of this. Alright, and just before the video ends, I would really appreciate it if you considered becoming a member. I do a bunch of more bonus content, some behind the scenes stuff, some how-to stuff, some additional bonus stuff, all for 99p a month. But if you want to go that little extra mile, then you'll also get the shout out as well. But that's everything. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and I hope you really enjoyed this. Thanks a lot for watching. Goodbye.